All right, my spookies, pull in close. Tonight we're standing at the crossroads where the moonlight looks like a spotlight and the shadows feel like witnesses. Somewhere out there, a signature is drawing on a page that was never meant to be read in the daylight. Because this is what the devil does best. He doesn't kick down the door. He offers you one. A clean deal, a quick fix, a glittering shortcut. And then later, the payments start. In these tales, you'll find bargains that turn motel rooms into confessionals, grief that whispers like a spell, a gamble that raises the stakes until the air itself feels rigged, and a stage lit by 3 simple chords that just might have been tuned by something that doesn't sleep. So breathe in deep, count your change, read the fine print, and if you hear a voice telling you it's a once-in-a-lifetime offer, remember, hell loves a payment plan. And make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. There's a brand new horror story every single Wednesday. The Deal Was Great, But the Payments Are Hell by Joe Solmo. Knock, knock, knock. Jeremiah walked to the front door with his daddy's trusty Colt in his hand. He wouldn't let them take him. He didn't know how they found him. He was really careful this time. He followed the rules his father laid out so long ago. He checked the locks on the cheap motel door before placing an eye at the peephole. Pizza delivery guy. Really? They thought he would fall for that one? Didn't order any. You got the wrong room, Jeremiah said in a lowered pitch voice. He gripped his pistol hard. This room 25, Mr. Greedle? It's Riedel. I changed my mind. I don't want the pizza, Jeremiah said, placing the end of the barrel against the cheap wood of the door. I can't return it. They're going to take it out of my pay. Come on, man. Have a heart, the pizza delivery guy said. Jeremiah watched the man's shoulders sag as he grew dejected. Man, this guy was good. Wonder where they found him. Sorry, I refuse delivery, Jeremiah said, running his left hand through his shoulder-length greasy hair. You can't do that. Come on, you owe me $18, the delivery guy said. Let me ask you something. What's your name? Jeremiah asked. Kevin. Let me ask you something, Kevin. Where did you get that uniform? Jeremiah said, looking at the red and black polo shirt Kevin was wearing through the peephole. What? They gave it to me when I got hired, Kevin responded. We both know that is a costume. Where's your real uniform? Jeremiah asked as a bead of sweat ran down his unshaven cheek. It was getting hot in here. Look, dude, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Are you going to open the fucking door or not? I got other deliveries to make and I ain't got time for no damn weirdos. Slowly, with his gun still in his hand, Jeremiah reached up and slid the chain out of the lock. With practiced ease, he unlocked it without making a sound. He reached down to the handle and paused. You'd love it if I just opened the door, wouldn't you? It would make your job so easy, Jeremiah said. Yeah, actually, that would be fucking great. Open the door, pay for the goddamn pizza, and let me get on with my life, Kevin said, exasperated. Jeremiah yanked the door open and grabbed the pizza from Kevin. Before he knew it, the pizza delivery guy was staring down the barrel of a revolver. It's your lucky day. I opened the door. Now get inside, Inferny, Jeremiah said, backing a step from the door to allow Kevin to enter. I won't ask twice. Kevin shuffled past the gunman and into the motel room. It looked like someone was living here for a while. Piles of clothes littered the floor among the other squalor. Sit down, Cambion, Jeremiah spat, motioning with the tip of the barrel at a table and chair combo in the corner of the room. Yo, what did you call me? Kevin asked. I know your true nature, fiend. Drop the act. You're going to answer a few questions for me, Jeremiah said as he sat down on the edge of the bed. How did you find me? The delivery app has the address. You must have given it when you called in for the pizza, Kevin said, eyeing the box sitting on the bed next to the deranged man with a gun. I didn't tell him which room it was. You were supposed to drop it at the front desk. So tell me, how are you tracking me? Some kind of dark juju? A blood hex? Blood. Ah, that must be it. You smell the blood of your own kind. I've killed before, you know. 12 or so. My father showed me the kinks in your armor, Jeremiah said as he stood and took 2 steps towards Kevin. My kind? What kind of racist shit is that? Kevin replied angrily. Up until now, Jeremiah hadn't noticed that the man was black. You know what I mean. Just admit who you really are, and I will toy with the idea of letting you go. I know I said I killed a bunch before, but if you cooperate, Jeremiah said and lowered the gun to his side. I just want this to end. Look, I just deliver pizzas. Just tell me what you want me to say and I'll say it, and we can both go on with our lives, Kevin said wide-eyed. A shiver ran up his spine as he looked at the twisted features of the man with the gun. Just tell me how they track me. How do they always pop up no matter how far I go? Just tell me this one thing. Jeremiah sighed. He sounded tired. He was tired. Being on the run was wearing him down. His father warned him about getting enough rest. That and not eating White Castles. Can't get the shits when you're on the run. Who are they? Maybe it's your cell phone. Your kind, and I don't got one. Your car? Stolen. Credit cards? I pay cash for everything. Then fuck, man, I don't know, Kevin said and shivered. What's the matter? Cold? Jeremiah inquired as he took off his own jacket and tossed it on the bed. It's a little cold for me, Kevin responded. Aha! I knew it. A little warmer back home, isn't it? Yeah, man. I'm from Atlanta. I'm not used to this New England fall weather. Damn tuition's so high I had to get a damn job delivering pizzas to crazy white folk, Kevin mumbled. Atlanta, eh? Jeremiah said and crouched down in front of his captive. You sure that's where you're from? Spent my whole life there until I met my girl and followed her to college. Why don't you just come out and say what you mean? Think I'm being all elusive and shit. Where do you think I'm from? Kevin asked and reached for the pizza box on the nearby bed. Jeremiah slapped his hand away. No pizza. It's probably got some kind of edible tracer in it. Wow. Just wow. You gonna hold me hostage and not even feed me the pizza they are gonna charge my ass for when it's all over? That's cold, man. To answer your question, I know where you're from. It's a lot hotter than Atlanta, though. Cambion. What did you call me? I ain't never heard that one before, Kevin said, getting more agitated and less afraid as the conversation went on. Cambion? That's what you are. The spawn of an incubus and a succubus. Demon spawn, sent to get me. My father warned me of your kind. He told me how you follow my family around and cause ruin. How it was up to me to stop it. To kill the demons plaguing us. I've done a few in, but it looks like my work ain't done. I know what I have to do. This ain't my first rodeo, Jeremiah said, lifting the pizza box top with the barrel of his gun and sneaking a peek inside. It did smell good. I don't care how many rodeos you've been to, except it seems like a bull kicked you in the damn head too many times. I ain't no demon. I'm just Kevin, from Atlanta, chasing college tail here in Boston. That's all there is, man, Kevin said. Liar, Jeremiah said, and pistol-whipped Kevin, who raised his hands over his face just in time to block the blow. Look, man, I'm just a human. Not even a good one, really. I'm definitely not whatever the hell you called it. I just deliver pizzas, and you're crazy. Maybe I am. But either way, I have to stop you from tracking me. Look, man, consider it stopped. Ain't no tracking happening over here. So you admit you were before, Jeremiah said before he was interrupted. Knock, knock, knock. This was getting ridiculous. With a smug look at his captive, Jeremiah headed to the peephole once again and peered through it. Standing on the other side was a young woman, scantily clad. She knocked again. "Mister, you in there?" came a high-pitched voice from the other side. "The desk said you might be interested since you were here alone." "Not interested," Jeremiah responded and spared a glance at Kevin, who was sitting still. Jeremiah made a shushing gesture. "How can you not be interested in this? It's barely legal," the woman said and flipped her hair. "Get the fuck out of here," Jeremiah yelled and cocked his gun. A second later, Kevin barreled into him and they both crashed into the door with a crack. It wouldn't be able to handle much more of that. The gun fell from Jeremiah's hand onto the worn, dirty carpet. Both Kevin and Jeremiah went for it, but instead their frantic grasping made it skitter further and further away. "Mister, you okay in there?" the woman asked from the other side. "Help!" Kevin yelled out and tried to punch Jeremiah in the face. They wrestled on the floor, no one getting the upper hand. "Mister, someone in there with you? Is that Dale?" "Oh, you're into guys," the woman said with understanding. "Help me!" Kevin yelled out. "Fuck off!" Jeremiah screamed. "Mister, I'm coming in. I got a key," the woman said from the other side. Jeremiah reached up towards the lock he forgot to set after bringing Kevin in. The door opened, and the woman's slender, bare leg entered the room. Jeremiah kneed Kevin in the balls to distract him and grabbed the woman's leg with a yank, sending her to the floor. In the chaos, he looked for the gun. Aha! Right by his bag. He dove towards the Colt revolver. The feel of the handle in his hands gave him all the reassurance he needed. It was his father's weapon. It served him well, until he was killed by these infernal fucks. He pulled the woman into the room and closed the door, finally getting control of the situation again. He pointed the gun at her. "You picked the wrong room, bitch." He fired a shot into her torso and turned the gun on Kevin, who had backed up to the wall, pulling his legs up into a fetal position. "Now, are you going to answer my question? I need them to stop following me. I need to be free from whatever it is that your kind wants," Jeremiah said. "I got nothing, man. This is crazy. You shot that hoe," Kevin said and looked over at the woman. His eyes grew wide as she first sat up, and then stood, checking her stomach for a wound, but there was nothing there. "You made the mistake," she said. Her eyes flashed with the fires of hell. She reached out and grabbed the gun in his hand and squeezed until the pain made him let go. She turned towards Kevin.
"This mortal has nothing to do with this. Go,"
she said and nodded towards the door. Kevin ran out of the room.
"Now we have you, Jeremiah. The blood debt will be paid. That much was promised 3 generations past. The third pays the price for the first, a grandfather's debt. I can smell the damnation on you from 5 miles away,"
the woman said and took a deep breath.
"Ah, sweetness."
"I never knew my grandfather. He won the lottery and left my father at the store when he was a kid. Dad said he tracked him down when he was a teen. That's when we learned about the rules," Jeremiah explained.
"The rules?"
the woman said with a hint of demon in her voice. "How to survive the curse. How to stay one step ahead of you," Jeremiah said and tried to run. He was grabbed in an iron grip by the woman. Her strong fingers dug into his shoulder. After a second, Jeremiah stopped struggling. A tear came to his eye. "Just gonna grab that pizza," Kevin said, ducking back into the room and grabbing the box. On the way out, he stopped and pulled a piece out. "No pizza for you," he said to Jeremiah and took a big bite. The woman turned her fiery eyes toward him. "Sorry, I'm out of here," Kevin said, taking the hint, and left. Halfway down the hall, he yelled, so much pepperoni. The woman turned her attention back to Jeremiah. The fires of hell blazed in her stares. Her skin began to peel as if burnt, and pieces fell to the floor around her. If she noticed, she didn't lead on.
I am your guide to pain, to the fate bestowed by your blood. I am all that you will know, all you will crave for, cringe away from, love, hate, lust, and disgust. The pain I provide, being the only existence you will know. I will only relent when you wish for non-existence, just long enough to give you hope, to steal it away again. That is what will sustain me for eons. I think we will start with disembowelment and move on to the hard stuff from there.
The woman said, and waved her arm in the air. A fiery opening ripped in the cheap carpet of the hotel room. The woman pushed Jeremiah down and jumped in herself after him. The portal closed up with a whiff of burnt carpet. A moment passed. The planet spun. The world went on. Then, movement. Kevin entered the room once again and went to the jacket on the bed. He found Jeremiah's wallet inside and took a wrinkled 20. He took a whiff and looked around. "It's for the pizza," he said, and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. Even Witches Can Cry by Charles Campbell. Rain is a funny thing. Sometimes it brings life. Sometimes it brings death. It can be seen through the lens of relief or of suffering. It just depends on when the rain comes, how hard it falls, and how long it stays. For Jillian Hubbard, the rain has worn out its welcome. It is there when she wakes up and when she goes to bed. It was a cold November rain that started 3 days ago, and it has not slowed down in the least. Jillian pulled the wool blanket from her twin-sized bed and looked to the empty crib in the corner. It had been 5 months since Clementine Rose Hubbard was stillborn. There was no Mr. Hubbard, and there had been no man in her life. Her pregnancy was a complete and total mystery. Jillian didn't know she was pregnant until she was almost 4 months along, but after hearing the baby's heartbeat, there was no way she was going to end her life in utero. She began hearing the cries 2 nights after returning home from the hospital. The cries sounded as if they came from the crib, and every time Jillian checked, the crib was empty and silent. Sometimes the crying would begin again as soon as Jillian returned to bed. Sometimes there wouldn't be another sound for the rest of the night. But the crying never stopped for good. Jillian suspected she may be suffering from some sort of postpartum depression. She remained hidden away in her house in the woods and would be there for a while. Her thick red hair was growing longer and her body showed no signs of her ill-fated pregnancy. She cut off all communication with the outside world, no internet, no cell phone. It was just Jillian, her thoughts, and the cries of Clementine. Jillian walked to the living area of her small home, curled up on the couch, and pulled the wool blanket around her. The house was cold, but Jillian always liked it cold. She liked the feeling of a warm blanket wrapped around her in a frosty room, so every room was always frigid. The rain and wind picked up its intensity, and there was the rap, rap, rap of slamming shutters at the front of the house. To secure them, Jillian would have to go outside, so she would live with the slamming. She turned the page on the book she was reading, Perennials, by novelist Bryce Gibson. She found the premise interesting. A serial killer that targeted victims based on names of plants. But she was struggling to focus on the words. Then she heard the first clap of thunder since the rain began. A few minutes later, the lights flickered. A few minutes after that, there was a lightning strike, and the power zapped out. It was mid-morning, so there was enough natural light, even though the sky was dark with clouds. Jillian sighed, set the book down, and closed her eyes. For the first time since she came home from the hospital, she heard Clementine cry during the day. Jillian's eyes opened. She left the blanket on the couch, and the chill of the room widened her eyes. She walked slowly to the bedroom. The baby was crying, and it was more intense than it had been. The baby was hungry. The baby needed her mother. "Clementine, Mommy's here," Jillian whispered as she got closer to the crib. The crying continued, but softened as if it may stop at any second. Jillian could hear her baby breathing. She could hear her moving around in the crib. Jillian stopped short of getting close enough to look inside. She knew that if she did, Clementine wouldn't be there. She could hear her baby girl breathe, move, and cry. That was better than breaking the connection by looking in the crib. She stood there and spoke to her baby. "Clementine, I wish you were with me. I needed you so badly and I didn't know it. I wanted to watch you grow up, put a bandage on your knee and kiss your boo-boo, fight with you when you would get to that age, see you off to school and watch you grow into a young woman." "Clementine is here," a man's voice whispered into Jillian's ear. "Who are you?" Jillian whispered back. "Do you want your daughter back with you, in the flesh?" asked the man. Jillian could feel his hot breath on her neck. She dared not turn toward him because she knew he wouldn't be there. "More than anything, can you bring her back to me?" Jillian asked. Clementine was no longer crying, but cooing and giggling in her crib. Jillian heard her baby giggle for the first time. "I can bring her back to you," said the voice. "What's the cost?" Jillian asked. She knew that such an act would come with a steep price. "I will claim the debt at a time of my choosing. You must do exactly what I demand within the time frame I set. It doesn't matter what is happening in your life at the time. I could ask for repayment of this debt tomorrow, or in 50 years. You must do it without question or hesitation. Do you agree to these terms, Jillian?" I do agree to those terms," Jillian quickly replied. "Go to bed, and when you wake up, Clementine will be waiting for you." The room fell silent. Jillian didn't look in the crib. She went to bed like she was told, and immediately fell asleep. The next morning, Jillian didn't hear anything when she awoke. She felt the disappointment of a hopeful dream shattering as she looked into the crib. There was no moving, no crying, nothing. Something on the dresser caught her attention. It was a piece of paper, and it looked official. She made out the stamp of Augusta University Hospital on top of the form. Jillian began trembling when she realized what she was about to pick up. It was an original, signed birth certificate of live birth for Clementine Rose Hubbard. Then she heard Clementine cry, and Jillian began to cry tears of elation. She set the paper down and rushed to the crib. There was a 5-month-old baby with slobber on her cheeks, kicking her chubby little legs. She was hungry. Jillian felt a trickle through her nightshirt. She was lactating. Oh my God. Is this real? Jillian lifted the child from the crib. Clementine had her features. Same eyes, nose, and mouth. Nothing to tell Jillian that there was any other DNA in the infant. You're a pretty girl, aren't you? Jillian asked as the baby was attempting to suckle. Jillian removed her nightshirt, and Clementine latched on as if she had been on the breast for 100 days. One year turned into 7, and Clementine was a precocious first grader, smart as a whip, and reading at a 5th grade level. She was curious about everything, and when she was 5, she asked Jillian why she didn't have a father. Jillian told her that her father disappeared one day and never returned. It was better than trying to explain the inexplicable. Jillian and Clementine moved from the woods to the suburbs of Ridgecliff Court in North Augusta when Clementine celebrated her 3rd birthday. It was the end of a school day, and Jillian was waiting in the pickup circle when Clementine was led to the car by Ms. Joan. "Hey, sweetie," Jillian said through the rolled-down window. Ms. Joan opened the passenger door and buckled Clementine in. "Good afternoon, Ms. Hubbard," Joan said. "Clementine is always so well-behaved. I'll see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow, Ms. Joan," Clementine said, and then turned to her mother. She was the spitting image of her. Red hair, freckled face, green eyes, and thin lips. "Did you learn a lot today?" Jillian asked as she drove away from North Augusta Elementary. "Yeah, we had a spelling bee today in class, and I won." Clementine was beaming. "That's great, honey. You're so smart." "I got a movie from the library. Ms. Jones said we should watch it together." "She did? What movie did you get?" "The Wizard of Oz." "Oh, wow. That's a great movie. I watched it a lot when I was a child." Jillian looked over at her own little miracle. "I'm making a pot of spaghetti and you need to go ahead and get your homework done. Then your bath. We'll eat and watch the movie before you go to bed. How does that sound?" "Perfect, Mommy. That sounds perfect." Clementine talked about the rest of her day until Jillian pulled into the driveway. It was movie time. Their bellies were full of spaghetti and Jillian hoped she could stay awake for the trip to Oz. Clementine was wide awake and excited. She put the movie in the player and was immediately transfixed by Dorothy, and was engrossed in the film until the house was swept away by the tornado. Her little green eyes welled in fear when she saw the witch flying by the window. She began to tremble. "Mommy, I don't like the witch," she whispered. "The witch can't hurt her. You'll see," Jillian whispered back. Clementine was getting comfortable again and even giggled when Dorothy removed the ruby slippers from the feet of the deceased Wicked Witch of the East. She was elated when the Munchkins broke into song proclaiming the witch dead. But when the Wicked Witch of the West showed up to claim those slippers, Clementine started trembling again. "Mommy, I don't like the witch. Turn it off. Turn it off. She's going to kill them all. She's going to kill them like in my dreams." Clementine screamed. Jillian turned off the movie. "Okay, baby, it's fine. She doesn't kill anybody. I didn't think she would scare you." "What did you mean when you said like in your dreams? Do you have dreams about witches?" Jillian asked as she held her daughter tightly to her bosom, stroking her hair. Clementine nodded yes, and Jillian asked, "Why didn't you tell me about them?" "I don't have them all the time, but the one in the movie looks like her," Clementine replied and pushed away from her mother. "I'm okay now, Mommy. I don't want to see that movie anymore. I'll take it back to the library tomorrow." "You sure you're okay, sweetie?" "Yes, I'm fine. I think I want to draw for a little while before I go to bed," Clementine said. Jillian was amazed at how this 7-year-old child could have a better conversation with her than most adults. "Okay. The next time you have a bad dream like that, please tell me. I don't want you to ever be frightened. I love you, my Clementine." "I love you too, Mommy." Clementine went to her room and pulled out her colored pencils and blank sheets of paper. Jillian watched her for a few minutes before she readied herself for bed. Clementine began drawing. She began carefully with the outlines. Then she used a dark gray pencil to shadow the dreary skyline. She sketched a large log cabin in the center of the paper and filled in the detail with blacks and browns. Trees surrounded the cabin. It was set deep in the woods. Then Clementine began filling in her outlines. There were 4 of them outside of the cabin, and 2 of them inside the cabin, peering out through the windows. They were witches, just like the Wicked Witch of the West. They were returning empty-handed from a hunt. Clementine drew a crimson shadow hiding in the woods. It was someone that often visited her dreams. Clementine finished her drawing and yawned. Sleep was coming and she wasn't going to fight it. Clementine went to sleep. The witches were there. Clementine was standing in front of the cabin. It was dark, just like the picture she drew, and she could see the flicker of fire through the cabin windows. Shadows were moving about inside. Clementine was afraid that she was going to be discovered. She saw the ember shadow in the woods, and it summoned her. Clementine stepped toward the window. The flames inside the cabin intensified. It sounded as if the woods themselves were cackling all around her. Clementine turned back toward the cabin. She could hear the man in the woods call her name. "Clementine, come to your father." Clementine was frozen in fear. She turned back toward the cabin, and the witches came storming out, brooms in hands. They all looked like the evil, wicked witch of the West. "Leave her! Leave her! You have no dominion here." They moved swiftly. "Death is all you'll find here. Our niece is protected." "Niece?" Clementine thought as she turned to run to her father. He would save her from the witches. Clementine felt a rush of hot air hit her in the face as the witches took flight, bypassing her and going straight for her father. They weren't coming for her at all. Why were they chasing her father? Clementine screamed, "Run, Daddy! Run! They're going to kill you!" Clementine woke up. She could hear her mother talking to someone in the other room. She wanted to scream, but she crept silently, listened, and realized the truth. Clementine was so very smart. She went back and grabbed a special doll hidden under her bed. Jillian went to bed early and woke up early. She could see the amber nightlight in Clementine's room when she stuck her head in to make sure her miracle was still sleeping. There was enough light that Jillian could see that Clementine finished her drawing before going to bed. Jillian would look at it after Clementine woke up. She could rest another hour before she needed to get up and prepare for school. Jillian went to the kitchen and turned on the coffee maker. She clicked on the television in the living room to get the early weather report. The television flickered for a second and went black. The lights in the kitchen flashed before they went out. There was a tingle down Jillian's spine. She knew what was coming. She felt his hot breath on her neck, but dared not turn to look at him.
"It's time to claim the debt,"
he whispered in her ear. His breath was incredibly hot, and Jillian could feel every thump of her heart.
"Look at me, Jillian."
Jillian stepped back and slowly turned her head. She saw the shape of a black-cloaked figure with ember eyes and sharp, pointy canines setting off 2 rows of intensely white choppers. His face was a very dark shade of crimson with charcoal gray eyebrows so prominent that they extended outward past the shield of the cloak. His crimson hands were more like the claws of a large marine iguana, with curved, sharp black nails at the end of each digit. Jillian was very afraid. She was very afraid of what she had done when she agreed to take on this debt. "Are you the devil?" she asked.
"No, Jillian. I'm not the devil. I have been called many names during the history of this world. You may call me Mazus."
What are you? Please don't hurt Clementine."
"I have no intention of hurting Clementine, as long as you repay the debt you agreed to with no questions asked. Remember?"
The demon smiled at Jillian. "I remember. What do you want me to do?"
"I need souls. I need the souls of children, and I need you to get them for me. Once you have harvested 6 souls, you will be free of your debt."
Mazus stepped closer to Jillian. You want me to kill children for you?"
"If you ask one more question, I will just take the one that I return to you."
Jillian's face was hot. Mazus was so close to her, and the heat from his skin was on the verge of burning her. It was so hot. "Leave my mommy alone," Clementine said. She was standing in the room. Mazus turned to face her.
"She's grown into such a lovely child, Jillian."
Mazus grinned, and the forked tongue flicked from his lips. "Don't touch her. I'll do what you ask. Just don't touch her. Please." Jillian was sobbing. "Daddy's not going to hurt me, Mommy. He's just being grumpy right now," Clementine said, and moved closer. "What? Oh my God, what did you say?" Jillian's mind flashed to a night. It was a nightmare that she never remembered, but it was all coming back to her now. A cloaked figure in her bedroom, in the middle of the night. She remembers him disrobing and laying with her. She remembers pleasure and darkness. When she awoke the following morning, she had forgotten the nightmare completely, and 4 months later she discovered Clementine was growing in her womb. Jillian realized Mazus is the one that took Clementine away in the delivery room, and he was the one to bring her back as bait, to do his unholy bidding. "Daddy, you're scaring Mommy."
"She has to do something for Daddy, and then I will only visit you in your dreams,"
Mazus said. He didn't realize the strength in this little one. "Mommy's a witch. She can kill you, Daddy. The other witches told me so." Clementine stepped closer to the two of them. She was holding something behind her back, and Mazus took note.
"She's a witch, you say? What do you think is more powerful, my love? A witch or a demon?"
Mazus grinned at the little red-headed girl. Clementine's eyes began to change. They were morphing from green to the charcoal gray eyes of her father. Her skin was changing color. It was turning crimson. "A demon is more powerful than one witch, Daddy, but a demon is not more powerful than 2 witches." Clementine pulled the doll from behind her back. It was once a Ken doll, but she had colored it in dark red from head to toe and painted gray where its eyes were. There was a little black cape and hood that Clementine cut from a black t-shirt. "This is you, Daddy, and the witches showed me how to make you hurt." Jillian could feel something in her mind. It was whispering. "The coven is with you, Jillian. Don't be afraid. Clementine will show you the way." "Mommy, the witches weren't trying to hurt me. They were showing me. They found me in between when Daddy hid me away. They told me what we were." "Daddy, leave Mommy alone." She twisted the arm on the doll. Mazus looked at Clementine with puzzled amusement.
"Your silly toys can't hurt me, child."
His focus shifted fully to the witch demon child pulling on the doll's arm. "There is no power in the doll," the witch's voice said. "It's a distraction. When he touches her—" "No, he can't touch her!" Jillian screamed and charged Mazus. The demon backhanded Jillian across the face. Her cheeks sizzled as soon as his claws touched her skin. The smell of burnt flesh rose in the air. Clementine dropped the doll and grabbed her father by his claw. Only then Mazus realized he wasn't facing two witches. He was facing an entire coven, all at once. They were chanting in unison, and you could feel the incantation setting in. It was a spell of banishment. He tried to pull away, but he couldn't break Clementine's grip. Jillian was pouring salt on the floor around them, trapping Mazus and Clementine in their own circle. Jillian and Clementine joined the coven's chant. "Cast the demon from your home. Cast the demon from your mind. Your whereabouts he will never find. If he darkens your door again, his soul will be cast to the wind. Cast the demon from your home. Cast the demon from your mind. Your whereabouts he will never find. If he darkens your door again, his soul will be cast to the wind." Mazus felt something. It was regret at choosing this woman. She was no Agnes Fields. Clementine's face turned a full, burning crimson. Her red hair was now replaced with flames, and she slung her demon father outside of the circle. He disappeared into black smoke. Clementine collapsed. Jillian rushed to her child, who had morphed back into a little girl as soon as she released Mazus. Clementine was crying on the floor. Jillian was crying with her. "We need to meet our family," Clementine sobbed. "They can help us, Mommy. They're not mean witches like in The Wizard of Oz." "We can, baby. I didn't realize." Jillian didn't know where to begin. "Let's go meet them, Mommy. They live in the woods near our old house." "Okay, let me get my broom," Jillian replied, and the two broke into laughter. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, my Clementine." "Mommy, we need to get an umbrella. It's raining where we're going." Gamble with the Devil by David O'Hanlon. Travis Gamble crumpled the rejection letter and tossed it into the trash on his way into the kitchen. It was the third one for the month. It frustrated him, but it wasn't the end of the world. Travis didn't need to work, after all. His family made armaments for the military. Desert Storm had inflated their net worth by hundreds of millions 2 years prior. Gamble didn't want to build weapons, however. He was a weapon. Every day went exactly the same. 2 scoops of Ultimate Orange to get him going. The ephedrine made his teeth grind and his ears hot, so he knew it was working. Then an hour on the Total Gym before breakfast. His diet never changed, nor did it need to. He'd structured his meals perfectly and followed each with beef liver tablets and amino acids. After the first meal of the day, he read from his collection of military manuals for 2 hours, then practiced martial arts. None of that strip mall taekwondo bullshit either. He was a student of the Dance of Death, an expert in dim mak, and he'd trained with ninja masters throughout the Midwest. After lunch, he did firearms training in the kill house he'd built, followed by a 5-mile run around the property. After a well-earned shower, Gamble spent his evenings looking for work. It seemed like every week a new mercenary outfit opened its doors, and none of them wanted to hire Travis. He took some odd jobs out of various classifieds, but the have-gun-will-travel shtick was getting old. He wanted real action, and he was about to get it. An increasing number of lawsuits were making it difficult for magazines to advertise his kind of work. But the internet was quickly finding its way into every home in America. The message boards were full of opportunities, but he needed to get his name out there. He applied for 3 outfits in Somalia and another working the Balkans before nodding off in the lazy boy with the latest issue of Gung Ho in his lap. 1:15 midnight, the overly excited salesman on TV woke him. Gamble watched the wiry little man with the push-broom mustache excitedly ramble on about the cheap junk he was hawking. That's when it hit him. Travis needed a commercial. Enter Ernest Valiant. Ernie had a certificate of completion from an advertising correspondence course, a big dream, and a bunch of video equipment he'd be paying on for the next decade if he didn't start finding gigs. His day job as assistant manager of the Emporium almost paid his rent. Almost wasn't good enough for his landlord, unfortunately, so when some gun nut offered him $20,000 to shoot a 2-minute commercial, Ernie did what anyone would do. He lied his ass off to make sure he got the job. His '78 Monza wagon clanked and groaned up the gravel path to Gamble's compound, and he pulled in front of the house. It was a strange structure that somehow managed to find synergy between feudal Japan and Memphis trailer park chic. Ernie kept his hand on the shifter, debating whether or not Gamble was an eccentric rich kid playing soldier or just another nut job with a manifesto. The size of the property told him that however it shook out, the check would still clear. He put the wagon in park. Ernie stepped out into the heat and humidity that seemed intent on sticking around, despite it being the first week of fall. Music from behind the redneck pagoda told him where he'd find his benefactor. He listened for a moment, trying to place the song. What kind of soldier of fortune listens to Prince? He wondered. Ernie shook it off and grabbed the JVC video camera from its case to look as professional as possible when he rounded the house. Ernie's shoulders sagged at what he saw. It was like watching the training montage in one of those shitty Blood Fist sequels. Gamble occupied the center of a training platform surrounded by fixtures holding wooden boards and stacks of bricks. He fired off blows in the air with loud "Kyahs!" in silk pants emblazoned with tigers on both sides. Once he finished the kata, Gamble bowed to an imagined sensei and launched into a furious chain of attacks that left splintered lumber and crushed masonry in his wake. Maybe the commercial is for Home Depot, Ernie thought with a quiet chuckle. Gamble bowed again and stepped down from the platform. "You must be Ernesto," he said, pulling a drenched sweatband from his high forehead. Somehow his Swayze-level mullet was still pristine. "I wasn't expecting you so early." "I drive with a heavy foot, I guess." Ernie tried not to roll his eyes at the obvious bullshit. He gestured at the former construction materials. "I guess this is just a regular part of your day, then." "Of course," Travis assured him. "Every part of my body is an instrument of death." "Taking a piss must be pretty intense," Ernie chuckled, but cleared his throat and regained his composure. "So, you think you could do that again? You said you were looking for a lot of action shots for the ad, and that was, well, it was pretty action-packed." "That was nothing," Travis waved it off. "No, Ernesto, you're going to be shooting real action. We'll get some B-roll today, of course. Some of the training drills I used to keep myself highly dangerous. Some workout shots to show off my bod. Maybe a dim mock demonstration, too." "That one come with a special sauce?" Ernie bit his lip. "It's the death touch," Gamble said matter-of-factly. "I can hit a man in the chest and rupture his cerebellum. It's about chi flow and utilizing the body's meridians to manifest an immediate, fatal result." "Sounds cool," Ernie nodded. "How about we manifest you a commercial?" And they did. Ernie filmed Gamble throwing ninja stars, doing push-ups, shooting mannequins, and breaking bricks for the remainder of the day. Whenever it was time to switch tapes or batteries, Travis had him record audio for possible voiceovers, where he blathered about warrior cultures, recited macho one-liners, and waxed poetic about the distinguished history of the mercenary profession. When they were finished, Travis insisted on them having dinner together, despite Ernie claiming every possible food allergy to get out of it. Gamble brought out the MRE rations and let his guest choose the entree. Ernie perused the shelf as he scooped what the package identified as beef stroganoff from the pouch with his plastic fork. "You've read all these?" Ernie asked. "Most of them," Gamble said. "I'm still working my way through a poor man's James Bond series, but I've committed the Anarchist Cookbook to memory. The same with The Art of War, Machiavelli's The Prince, and the Book of Five Rings. I read one of the military training manuals every day. They're a bit too technical for recreational reading, but are an imperative part of my mission to be the world's greatest mercenary." "Right." Ernie dropped the utensil into the ration pouch. "I'd say you're off to a good start. I'll go through what we shot and get you something this week that really captures your, energy and badassness. Oh, but that was just the filler. We haven't gotten to the good stuff yet. You know, the real meat and potatoes of what I'm doing." "Hopefully those don't come in another of these pouches," Ernie scowled. He was sure he'd earned his paycheck after spending the day on the set of Enter the Douchebag. There was more than enough material to convince people he could intimidate their ex-wives or beat up the neighborhood bully or whatever the fuck kind of work Gamble thought a highlight reel would drum up. "We still have to shoot the action scenes," Travis told him. "The karate wasn't the action?" "Ninjutsu," Travis corrected him. "No, the action has to be authentic. It can't be training footage or stage fights. You are going to accompany me on a genuine assault of a terrorist compound." "Yeah, sorry to tell you this now, but I don't have a passport." Ernie shook his head. "Besides, I have other clients this week, so I can't." "You'll be home in time for Frosted Flakes," Travis interrupted with a smile. He hadn't done that all day. Ernie wished he hadn't then either. The expression made his skin prickle and his balls shrink up tight to his body. Gamble stalked across the living room and took the pouch from Ernie's hand with a delicate, almost lover-like movement. The smile grew wider. He pressed a finger to Ernie's lips as they started wriggling into an objection. "I have something special for you to wear," he told the cameraman. The hour-long drive through the Tennessee backwoods was filled with awkward silence. The men wore matching flak jackets, though Gamble wore his over his bare torso, and camo stripes adorned his face and lean, muscular arms. He'd given Ernie a Kevlar helmet to match the body armor, but the would-be merc didn't bother protecting his own head. It probably wasn't necessary anyhow, and it would have deprived him of the opportunity to be a stereotype while he tightened his headband around his brow like Rambo. Gamble had given Ernie little more information on their mission, only that there was a threat to the American way of life looming in the sticks southwest of Nashville. Ernie wasn't entirely convinced the story wasn't part of some kinky sex murder thing when they finally came to a stop. Sure, he hadn't been tied up, and he did have the surplus armor, but maybe it was all part of Gamble's strange fetish. Maybe the mercenary wanted them to go out into the woods and jump into each other's foxholes before killing Ernie in a friendly fire fantasy. That seemed to be the case when Travis opened the glove box. Ernie swallowed hard at the sight of the cold, blue steel within. "Take that, just in case," the merc said. Ernie slid the revolver out of the compartment and checked to see if it was loaded. It was. That made the game a bit stranger. Ernie angled the barrel towards Gamble under his arm just in case it was all a ruse. Why are we way out here?" he muttered. "I told you, we're defending freedom and kicking ass." Gamble took a swig of Ultimate Orange from a travel mug before continuing. St. Dimphna's youth asylum is 3 clicks through the woods. And it's full of terrorists? Ernie shook his head vigorously. I'm here to film a commercial. Call the FBI or something. Why? Gamble got out of the truck. Ernie hesitantly followed him. The meager spray of moonlight coming through the trees made Gamble look like a mirage as he moved to the tailgate. Calm down, Ernesto. They're not actual terrorists, Gamble assured him. They're just devil worshippers. It was either this or crash a drug lab. The second one might seem undemocratic of us. Free market capitalism is the anchor that keeps America in the harbor of freedom after all. So we're going after the Satanists. Easy peasy. Chances are they won't even be armed. It'll be a walk in the park. Have you walked through a fucking park lately? Ernie's voice cracked and he brought it back down to a whisper. People get murdered in parks. You're one guy. The police send in entire SWAT teams for things like this. And what the fuck do you mean chances are? Didn't you do some kind of recon or whatever it's called? We don't need a SWAT team. I'm better trained than those pussies. He unsnapped a plastic case. Plus, we have Sally. Who's Sally? Gamble held up the rifle. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. He inserted a magazine and pulled back the charging handle. Sally is my babe. A Ruger Mini 14 bullpup conversion with laser sighting and modified for full auto. She goes from siesta to fiesta with 2 pounds of trigger pressure. Each magazine is 30 rounds of mercury-tipped boat-tail hollow points that explode on impact and will turn this black mass into a Bielsa bloodbath. Okay, yeah, so that was actually pretty clever, Ernie begrudgingly admitted. But that's one gun against an entire cult. I have another. Gamble pulled an obscenely long piece of overcompensation from the high-mounted holster on his right leg. This is my mistress. She's save me the guns and ammo review, Gamble. I could get killed. Ernie pointed at the mercenary's waist. Are those fucking nunchucks? Of course. Gamble holstered his pistol and removed a sword from his case. He pointed it at Ernie. We want the video to show off as many of my skills as possible. You're not filming a commercial. You're making a goddamn snuff film. Don't be ridiculous, Ernesto. He sheathed the sword across his back. It's only a snuff film if someone jerks off to it. People jerk off to everything. You know what the most rented movie at the Emporium was last month? Miss Piggy Does Houston. Have you ever seen a Muppet getting butt-fucked by a grown man? Not since I rented the movie. Travis snickered and slapped Ernie on the shoulder. I'm fucking with you, man. Beating it lowers your testosterone. That's probably why you have man boobs, by the way. Grab your camera, Kermit. It's time to take Piggy out dancing. The night vision filter on the camera cast the structure in various shades of green and black. Vines and graffiti gave life to the drab, battered facade of the 2-story asylum. The architecture itself was as exciting as a Lego brick. Bars sat over broken window panes, and a pair of heavy wooden doors stood wide open and half off their hinges. Headstones of pauper graves stood among knee-high grass along the western side of the building. Ernie panned the camera there and spotted only the occasional blur of movement as Travis Gamble closed in on the target through the cemetery. He actually looked like he knew what he was doing. Ernie redirected the camera to the hospital. Flickering light danced from some of the upstairs windows. Shadows fluttered on the walls, breaking up the verdant video feed with obsidian specters. Ernie fought back a nervous gag. 2 people came around one side of the building in a lazy curve that skirted the boneyard. Ernie zoomed the camera in for a closer look. They wore matching outfits with sheepskin chaps and open robes. The camera was zoomed to its max, and the details of the medallions hanging around their necks were lost in the low resolution. Something flashed in the moonlight, and spurts of black liquid gushed from one man's neck. Gamble sprang from the tall grass and launched himself in a flying kick that dropped the other. Gamble drew his sword, striking a pose with it before thrusting the blade into the prone guard. He pivoted to find the first man still stumbling. The spurting had lost its intensity. Gamble swung the sword,
and the man's torso separated from his legs. Ernie spewed stroganoff into the bushes. He'd have to edit that out of the footage later, if he survived and escaped a prison sentence. Gamble waved for him to come. The cameraman wiped his mouth on the back of his hand and debated running back to the truck. Static crackled in his ear. "Come on, Ernesto. Get some close-ups of these two before we go inside," Gamble said over the radio. "This sword is ridiculously sharp. Did you see how it cleaved that D&D geek in half?" He'd seen it, and thanks to the reminder, vomited once more before responding that he was on his way. By the time he arrived, Gamble had taken position at the corner of the building to make his next move. Ernie dutifully filmed the corpses. Bubbles rose and popped from one of the victim's lips. "Is this guy still alive?" "If he is, I want my money back for the sword," Gamble said with a quick glance back. "I stabbed him in the brain, doofus. He's not alive. The bubble thing is air leaving his lungs since he's no longer using them." "Oh. Come on, the next part is going to happen pretty fast," Gamble said. It's all happening pretty fast, Ernie thought. The two men made their way along the front of the asylum. The mercenary made a show of checking the doorway before rolling through and sweeping the room with the barrel of his rifle. He gave a series of hand signals that hadn't been part of Ernie's limited briefing. Gamble sighed. "Come inside," he hissed. Ernie did so. He filmed the dilapidated interior. Pentagrams, 666s, upside-down crosses, and the rest of the satanic regalia peddled by Hollywood had been spray-painted wherever there wasn't a fist hole or a thick patch of black mold to obscure the canvas. Gamble started up an L-shaped stairway, while Ernie took some quick establishing shots. "Hey!" a voice called out. "Who the fuck are you, dickweed?" Ernie froze in place. "I'm talking to you, Jizzstain. This is for black lambs only. What are you doing here?" the gruff voice demanded. "Mostly trying not to shit myself at the moment," Ernie muttered. He turned slowly. The man came closer, passing by a barrel of bursting detritus that cast a hellfire glow across the goat skull he'd fashioned into a mask. Ritual scars adorned his dark, bare chest. His hand moved to the grip of a dagger. "I asked who the fuck you are!" he growled. I'm with ABC." "ABC?" The guard stopped walking and drew the blade from its sheath. "That stands for about to be castrated?" "God, I hope not." Ernie's free hand covered his crotch. "We're doing a piece on religious freedom in America. I didn't realize you guys were having a meeting tonight. I'll come back later." "Only in a seance, dickweed." The man charged. Ernie aimed the camera at him, hoping his last moments would at least look cool if anyone ever found the footage. Then the killer grunted and toppled forward. The animal skull shattered, spreading bone like confetti across the dingy tile floor. Ernie moved the camera down, since looking at the carnage through the lens was easier on his stomach. Over half of the throwing star had buried itself into the cultist's brainstem. "Smart thinking not using the gun I gave you," Gamble said over the radio, and waved him to follow upstairs. "Yeah, I thought that was the best play," Ernie lied. He'd forgotten all about the magnum stuffed into his waistband. He wouldn't next time. Ernie stepped around yet another dead body, wondering if Gamble might actually be the bad motherfucker he presented himself to be, before jogging up the stairs as quickly as possible. Gamble stayed close to the wall as he stalked down the hallway with Sally pressed tight into his shoulder. Ernie tried to copy the movement, but it ruined his shot, and his sense of professionalism overrode his sense of self-preservation. He stepped into the center of the hall for the best angle on the mercenary. Candles, some of them scented, burned along the sides, providing only enough light to avoid tripping over scattered debris and refuse. Obscene chanting in a malevolent tongue carried from one of the rooms further along the path. A masculine, deep voice bellowed arcane words of power that crackled with artificial amplification. The revelry of the worshippers gained fervor. There were other sounds, closer, but not as scary. Gasps, moans, squeals. Ernie's mind pushed them away and focused on the nefarious chanting. Gamble paused and peeked around an empty door jamb. He ducked back, holding up a clenched fist that Ernie assumed meant stop. Gamble signaled for silence and then pointed at the room. Ernie stepped cautiously as he maneuvered for a shot of whatever was waiting inside. His stomach pitched, but there was nothing left to throw up. Dozens of mutilated goats hung from the ceiling, some sacrificed so recently that the muscles still twitched and made them dance on their hooks. Guts dangled from their split torsos and trickled blood like broken faucets. Ernie followed a long rope of entrails with his camera down onto the occupants of the room. On a collection of mildewed mattresses and in puddles of spilled sacrificial offal, the cultists, wearing nothing but their woolen chaps, fucked in every conceivable position. Bloody skin slapped together and peeled apart again and again. A woman chewed at a length of intestine to muffle her orgasmic shrieking. Two of the men interlocked their hands in a mystic form as they thrust themselves into a third from opposite ends. A gory blonde held herself up by the ribcage of one of the animals while three mouths went to work on different erogenous zones. Nothing at the Emporium compared to what Ernie was filming. He stole a glance around the hall but kept the camera on the action. He was sure they couldn't see him recording, or his own cock straining against the fabric of his khakis. The blonde shuddered and squealed, then seemed to stare straight into Ernie's eyes. Not my eyes, he realized. The blinking red recording light reflected off the fractured window behind her. Ernie moved his hand to the butt of the revolver. If she alerted the others, he was as good as dead. It was self-defense, but that didn't make it easier to wrap his mind around. He didn't want to kill anyone. He wasn't sure if he could, despite how easy Gamble made it look. Speaking of, the mercenary slid something from a pouch on his body armor. Ernie turned to get a better look at the cylindrical device through the night vision. The lens flashed with a sudden flare, and then sparks shimmered and fell like iridescent snowflakes from the top. Ernie's mind flashed back to the bookshelf at Gamble's place, to the black cookbook with the white letters on the spine. Gamble chucked the device into the room, then gestured frantically for Ernie to move. The camera went from the sparkling fuse to the confused faces of the orgy-goers that noticed. Most kept on fucking, oblivious to the incendiary intrusion. Orgasms built around the room. Ernie scanned the crowd. The blonde was trying to warn the others but stammered the words as her lovers continued biting, licking, and sucking at her flesh. Ernie couldn't make his feet move. He wanted to shout for everybody to run, but he only managed to lick his lips in anticipation. The swelling in his pants grew until it hurt. Lustful screams rose as the fuse shortened. Ernie dived away at the last second. The bomb exploded, and so did he. When the ringing left, he could hear that the room was still full of screams, just not the pleasurable kind. Ernie huffed in post-orgasmic exhaustion. Shame, fear, guilt, embarrassment, and lingering arousal all swirled around in his skull like a witch's brew. He pulled himself into a fetal position as Gamble stepped into the doorway and opened fire on the survivors. Ernie forced himself onto his back to keep filming. The other cultists had stopped chanting and were storming the hallway. Gamble had greatly underestimated their numbers, but luckily not their armament. The merc changed magazines and Sally sang like Streisand in his fists. Baseball-sized holes opened in rampaging bodies. Heads exploded, limbs and bits of ceremonial garb flew into the air. Another nail bomb slid down the corridor. Gamble fired from the hip as he strafed the Satanists with gunfire. The bomb went off, throwing corpses and pieces of them in all directions. Gamble let Sally hang from her sling as he helped Ernie to his feet. "I sure hope you got all that on tape," he said. "Uh-huh," Ernie managed to squeak out. He was more concerned with hiding the stain spreading down his leg. "I got it all right." "Let's see what they were up to," Gamble suggested as he started through the smoldering sea of carnage. Nails stuck out of charred flesh, and the smell of burnt wool hung heavy in the air. Gamble's pistol boomed as he delivered his own sort of mercy to a still groaning victim. He guided Ernie to the last door on the left and swung inside with the hand cannon ready. Ernie whimpered. It wasn't nearly as pleasant as the previous room. The symbols painted on the walls of the room were much more intricate and well-crafted than the crude graffiti he'd seen upon entry to the asylum. This room wasn't for amateurs. He tried to blink away pulling tears as he took it all in. 4 hospital gurneys were lined up inside a circle of black candles. Each had a person strapped to it, and blood poured over the sides of 3 of them before disappearing down a floor drain. Ernie filmed the bodies first. Each was young, mid-teens at the latest, with their chests torn open and their hearts burning inside. The pungent scent of incense rose from the low green flames engulfing the organs. A powerfully built man in heavy vermilion robes stood stoically over the only survivor. The skull of a bighorn ram hid his face as he moved his glance from Gamble to Ernie. A prepubescent girl squirmed against her restraints before him. "You should leave," the priest said, slipping the mask off and letting it shatter on the floor. "The ritual is for the eyes of the faithful alone." "The ritual's been canceled, pal." Gamble leveled his pistol at the man's chest. "On the bright side, you're about to meet the devil in person." "I already have, you fool." The priest raised a double-bladed sacrificial knife. "You must leave while there's still time. This must end tonight. We must undo what—" The gunshot boomed and echoed through the shower room. The priest's brains splattered the wall behind him. He stumbled back and forth, his eyes rolled up and crossed in an attempt to see the puckered hole in his forehead. Gray matter slithered down the tile walls like slugs. The priest collapsed on top of the struggling child, and they slumped away in a heap. Ernie lowered the Magnum's smoking barrel and let the gun clatter to the floor. "God damn it, Ernesto!" Gamble jammed his own pistol into his holster. "I was supposed to kill him." He looked at the camera, still trained on the gore-spattered wall. He raised an eyebrow and nodded appreciatively. "Wow, you made that shot without taking the camera off the guy?" he said with bemusement. "Maybe with some creative editing I can still take credit for it. For the sake of the commercial, I mean. But damn, man, you are a natural at this sort of thing. If we get you in shape and work on that vomiting problem you have, you could make a damn good mercenary yourself." "I don't want to be a fucking mercenary," Ernie screamed. "I just want to go back to my shitty fucking apartment, cry in my scuzzy shower, and think happy fucking thoughts." "Happy thoughts?" the little girl said. She giggled melodically. "Happy thoughts, happy thoughts." "There's you a happy thought, Ernesto." Gamble moved to the gurney and started undoing the child's restraints. "You rescued a little girl from a sick asshole. Sure, I did most of the work, but you played a crucial role in the operation. Is that thought happy enough for you?" "Those aren't the thoughts that make Ernie happy," the girl said in her sweet, dainty voice. "Sarah is Ernie's happy thought." "Who's Sarah? Your girlfriend?" Gamble asked. "Do you know the Rugrat?" Ernie shook his head in equal confusion. "That was her name, the blonde that looked you in the eyes," the sacrificial child explained. "The one you didn't try to warn, the one you were thinking about when the bomb went off, the one that made you come like a virgin in a stiff breeze. She's your happy thought, not the way she was then, but the way she is now." I think she's talking to you," Ernie stammered. "No!" The gravelly, malevolent voice boomed from the child's mouth. Her voice returned to its previous delicate playfulness as she continued. "I know you, Ernie. You can't wait to get home and watch the footage. You want to touch yourself, to stroke your anorexic cock while you picture Sarah's smoldering flesh and the ravaged stumps that used to be her legs pressing on the sides of your head while you lap at her ruptured gut." "That's pretty sick, man," Gamble said with a disapproving glance at Ernie. "I don't know what she's talking about. She's fucking traumatized or something." "Oh, please," She giggled and sat up suddenly, snapping the remaining strap around her shoulders with ease. An innocent smile formed on her tiny face. I know all about the secret collection of videos, the ones you rent out to special customers. The ones you make at your cousin's mortuary with that adorable little gimp mask on to hide your shame. She rolled off the gurney, kneeling next to the priest. Gamble jumped clear and reached instinctively for his pistol. The girl lifted the dead man's head. You like corpses, but you've never gotten to see one being made before, she continued. You've never had access to ones as fresh as these tonight. The girl shoved her fist into the back of the priest's skull and wiggled her finger out of the entrance wound. She laughed and looked up at Gamble. What do you think, Travis? It might be a bit of a tight fit, but I bet our pal Ernie could have the time of his life with this one. Listen, kid, Gamble started. Kid? The child looked down at her floral dress and frilled socks. Oh, yes. The little ones are so much easier to bargain with. Promise them an ice cream, throw a kitten in, and they'll invite any old soul in for a stay. The child blinked away her blue eyes and replaced them with red, pupilless orbs. What in the hell? Travis stumbled back and whipped his pistol from the holster. Yes, hell indeed. The child's voice deepened again. She stood, pulling off the priest's head with ease and bowling it across the floor. She pranced between two of the occupied gurneys and sighed. It's a shame you didn't get here sooner to save the others. We haven't had a boys' night out since Loudon. I suppose I could burn down a convent in their honor. That would do nicely, don't you think? Ernie knelt to retrieve the revolver when the gurneys flew across the room and smashed the tilted walls into shards. The child held up a finger and wiggled it disapprovingly. Her back rippled with movement beneath her skin. An alarm clock chimed in the corner. The girl snapped her fingers, and it exploded. Its little brass bell pinged off Ernie's helmet. The child levitated from the floor. Time's up. Warranties expired. Trial period over, she growled. No refunds, no returns, and no fucking exchanges. Here's a lesson you won't live long enough to need, Travis. Never summon what you can't put back. Gamble raised the pistol. The metal fissured and the weapon fell to pieces in his hand. The girl floated around him and laughed demonically. You wanted to go to war, Travis. So, allow me to oblige. First, we'll need an army. The child clapped her hands, and groans filled the corridors of the asylum. The floor shook and fractured. Asbestos fell from the trembling ceiling. Ernie looked over his shoulder and screamed. He stumbled further into the room, making way for the shambling cadavers filing through the doorway. Dismembered bodies crawled and hobbled while disembodied appendages slithered like caterpillars into the room. More moans emanated from outside. Rotting children scaled the building, shaking off their dirt of their graves as they clawed their way through the crumbling walls. Sarah's buxom torso, with her bloodied blonde hair hanging from her mangled scalp, scurried across the room on ragged, nail-studded stumps. Ernie shrieked in horror as the reanimated victims of the asylum and Gamble's own perverse roleplay converged on the mercenary. Gamble swung his nunchakus at them wildly. The wood thudded against the flesh and cracked bones, but the assault didn't stop. Sarah rushed through the fracas and clamped her teeth down on Gamble's crotch. His high-pitched screech disappeared in a cacophony of chewing and tearing as he was swallowed by the mass of the necromantic mob. Ernie staggered to the wall and slid down, unable to take his eyes off the scene as he had been with the orgy. That's what this is, he told himself. This is another orgy. Flesh on flesh, mouths on flesh, penetration, bodily fluids mingling, exchanging. He didn't want to admit it, but it had the same stiffening effect on him as before. The demon was right. He liked the dead. He liked the way cold skin felt on his warm lips and the way it held him when he slipped inside. He crawled across the floor tentatively. Gamble was crying under the heap of undulating meat and viscera. Ernie crawled faster. He sprang into the dog pile. Guts squished between his fingers as he buried himself in the carnage. Sarah chewed viciously at Gamble's thigh, and Ernie grabbed a fistful of her hair to pull her face up to his. They came forward to meet in a kiss, playfully passing a piece of Gamble between their mouths. The child's laughter echoed through the asylum as the building collapsed in on itself. The helmet Travis had given him saved Ernie's life. It took a few hours to crawl out of the rubble, but he managed. He walked through the forest hand in hand with Sarah until the last bits of sinew tore and the arm came free from the rest of the torso. It was probably for the better. Whirlwind romances never seemed to last anyhow. He kept the arm, though, for the long drive home. Rigor was setting in, and it would give him one hell of a squeeze. Ernie hadn't just survived the night. He'd been reborn. He had a new understanding of who he was and what he needed to do with his life. You can't wait for the things you want to come to you in life. No, you have to go out and find them yourself. He'd go back to Gamble's home. The books and weapons there were just what he needed. Sarah had been special, if only for one night. But she'd shown him what his life was missing. He pulled the revolver from his waistband and smiled. Ernie just needed to find someone to love.
The Devil Knows Three Chords by John Oak Dalton, a WeeklySpooky original.
Chester Killbuck and Bobby Lee Starr were one of the hottest bluegrass duos of the 50s and early 60s, but it all ended in a dumpster behind the Avalon Ballroom in San Francisco in 1968. Like a lot of bluegrass musicians at the time, they started in the Bluegrass Boys in the late 40s and then joined the Foggy Mountain Boys in the early 50s before setting off on their own as Killbuck and Starr. Chester and Bobby Lee couldn't have been more different, and thus made an unlikely team. Chester was married 3 or 4 times and had several kids that hated him, and several more he wouldn't admit to having and who didn't know he was their daddy. Bobby Lee was still married to his first wife Marion, and they had a son, Johnny, who was born blind in 1946 and who Bobby Lee lived and died for. Chester followed the old ways in the old music, but Bobby Lee saw things differently when his son started playing folk music with a couple of other guys. Bobby Lee wanted to add some more Bob Dylan and Graham Parsons to their song list, but Chester said that would never get them on the Porter Wagoner show, and they would get booed out of the Grand Ole Opry. Bobby Lee got through a lot of his disagreements with Chester by bringing Johnny on the road with him when he was old enough, and Johnny became a great mandolin player in his own right. So in the same way that they wanted to leave Bill Monroe and then leave Flatt and Scruggs, Johnny wanted to forge out on his own. It was the way of things, and Bobby Lee could not deny his son. But his son still needed him. So when Johnny Starr made a deal for his own band with the Avalon Ballroom, which was the premier venue in San Francisco at the center of everything happening in 1968, he might have mentioned his dad would come and play too. The Avalon promised Killbuck and Starr top billing, and Johnny's band Lemon Dirty Fingernails second, ahead of the Stone Ponies and the Lewis and Clark Expedition. Chester was very angry with the deal, but went along with it. And as it happened, Killbuck and Starr killed it in front of all these young people who were turning on to the Bakersfield Sound and the Byrds and Dylan. And suddenly, Bobby Lee could see a future for the duo, a future beyond the long county fair tours, a future beyond waiting for someone to tap their shoulder for the Opry. Bobby Lee waited backstage for his son, who was still out talking to friends, and it was good that he was late because he found out quickly Chester was still fuming. Bobby Lee found, at the little rickety table in the dressing room, his son had left a water bottle with a note that said, "Drink me," and a plate of food with a note that said, "Eat me." It was punched out in Braille with the little stylus and slate both father and son had learned to use. Bobby Lee was drinking down the water when Chester banged the door open. Bobby Lee looked at him with a smile and a squint. "I thought you slipped off with that little gal in the front row in those short shorts," Bobby Lee said.
Chester's frown deepened. Hell, that gal had more armpit hair than I do. You couldn't tell who was the girl and who was the boys with all that long hair out there. They loved us, Chester, Bobby Lee said. They should love their goddamn country. Your son's a cripple and has an excuse, but the rest of them boys should be over in Vietnam fighting communism, Chester proclaimed. That killed off Bobby Lee's good feeling. It'd be nice if you could be happy with one thing in this world, Bobby Lee muttered, but Chester wasn't listening. As usual. That one hairy SOB that plays with Johnny has a dog he calls Roy a Cuff, Chester added. He means that with respect, Chester, Bobby Lee said. You don't name a hound dog after Roy a Cuff, Chester shot back. Bobby Lee shrugged. These young folks, they got their own thing going on out here, Bobby Lee said. Chester looked at him with narrowed eyes and lit a lucky strike. They ain't our people, Bobby Lee. Our people are in Oklahoma and Iowa and every little town between there and Nashville. This whole state could fall off into the ocean and good riddance to 'em all. Bobby Lee looked at his partner full in the face. Johnny is my son, and he's living out here. And he's got a band he calls Lemon Dirty Fingernails. And that ain't a band name, although one word is accurate. Bobby Lee swallowed hard and began to sweat. Bobby Lee wasn't sure, but it looked like the walls were sweating too. I didn't do what I did to end up playing to a room full of draft dodgers and drug addicts, Chester said. Bobby Lee frowned. What did you do, Chester? Bobby Lee thought the flowered wallpaper behind Chester was starting to bloom. Chester looked at him. You think Robert Johnson was the only man ever met the devil at the crossroads? Blues music is in the roots of the soil, but so is country music. Those roots are even deeper. You don't think a bluegrass man could find his way to those crossroads? Chester's normally red face, flushed with anger and drink, became even redder. What do you think is at them crossroads? Behind him, the flowers bloomed, black. Do you think what career we have come from good looks and your sweet nature? Bobby Lee watched a cold smile come across Chester's face, full of yellow teeth. And then, as Bobby Lee watched, a pair of horns began to grow out of his forehead. Chester's voice came in a hard rasp. Let me ask you another question. You knew me back when we both lived in the Cumberland homesteads up in those mountains. When you'd know my family ever have money for a fiddle? When did you ever see me practice on one when I wasn't already good? In answer, Bobby Lee picked up the bottle again and smashed it into Chester's face. Chester fell with a growl, and Bobby Lee was on him in a flash, choking him, and after a few moments, Chester's eyes bulged, and the horns receded, and Bobby Lee quit his work. The walls quit sweating and blooming, and Chester looked like a normal person again, and Bobby Lee realized this was going to be hard to explain. So Bobby Lee dragged Chester out the back door into an alley and heaved him up into a dumpster and hoped that was going to be enough. Chester was heavy, and it was slow going as the ground beneath Bobby Lee seemed to buck and heave. Bobby Lee was grateful there wasn't anyone lounging at the mouth of the alley during his work. The crowd had dispersed, and with them, the good vibes, and suddenly the Avalon was just a crumbling old building. He got back into the tiny dressing room just ahead of his son, who came in beaming. Pops, it was quite a night, Johnny said. Bobby Lee steadied his voice. It was. I'm proud of you, Bobby Lee said. Where's Uncle Chester? Bobby Lee wiped at his brow. Oh, he found some trouble to get into, I reckon. Johnny nodded, then reached out a hand. Pops, you're sweating and you sound funny. You drink that water I left for you? Sure. Why? Johnny nodded more seriously and slowly. I'm sorry. I wanted to get back here sooner. I wanted to go on that trip with you. What trip? I dosed that water, Pops. I thought we could tune in together tonight to celebrate. It looks like you started without me, but I can walk you through the rest of the way. Just remember, everybody here's a friend. This place is full of love tonight." Bobby Lee sat down hard. "You didn't eat the brownies? Cool. You eat one and I'll eat one and we'll be on this trip together. I can see things when I trip, Pops. If you can dig that." Dig was a funny word to Bobby Lee. He had dumped, not dug, a place for Chester to rest. Bobby Lee started laughing. "Pops?" Bobby Lee couldn't stop laughing all night. They got onto the Opry after all when they did a tribute show for Chester Kilbuck. Bobby Lee took Johnny to Nudi's Rodeo Tailors in Hollywood and got matching rhinestone suits for the gig. Earl Scruggs showed up and played with them. Mother Maybelle Carter was there, and so was Doc Watson. Doc Watson brought his son Merle, and Scruggs brought his sons Randy and Gary, and that made it more special for Bobby Lee. Roy Acuff was the MC, and it was just as well nobody in Johnny's band mentioned they had a dog named after him. The summer of love didn't seem to last a summer even. Johnny's band got broken up by the draft after all, and then broken up for good by the Viet Cong and Dien Bien Phu. Some people said the summer of love ended with the violence at Altamont Speedway, with the Rolling Stones and the Hells Angels and everything that went down. Some people pointed to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and some the killing of Bobby Kennedy. Some even said it ended when a hippie girl tricked Chester Kilbuck into going into an alley with her, where a bunch of her friends cornered him and beat him to death for his take at the Avalon Ballroom that night. The Avalon closed just a few months later and got converted into a movie theater. The first movie they showed was The Love Bug with Dean Jones. Bobby Lee took his son on the road for a short while, but Emmylou Harris called for him to record and tour with her, and once more, Bobby Lee could not deny his son. Chester was 3/4 outlaw, but he was the one with the business sense, and Bobby Lee was the one that always got lost in the music. That is why Bobby Lee felt that if Chester made a deal, he should keep it. So Bobby Lee kept doing the circuit, the fairs and the VFWs, and the high school gyms, and if he was doing a show in a nice small town on a Sunday, somebody would always invite him back to their house for fried chicken. As the years went on, Bobby Lee began to understand more of what might have happened that night at the Avalon Ballroom, but he was never really quite sure. Because if you sing the old songs that people wanted to hear, the gospel and the hymns, you had to believe it. You had to believe it, or the audience would know. When you sang, "Will the Circle Be Broken?" you had to feel that there was a better home awaiting by and by. So if you believed in one place, it only made sense you believed in the opposite place. There had to be an opposite, just like Kilbuck was the opposite of Starr. But they only worked their best together. So if Chester Kilbuck had really stood at the crossroads and made a promise, it was better to keep that promise than cross your fingers and hope that none of it was real.
And there it is, my spookies. 4 deals, 4 doors opened, and not a single one that closed without taking something with it. Maybe that's the real curse, not the horns, not the flames, but the moment you realize the bargain wasn't a trap. It was a choice you felt sure about, right up until the bill arrived. Right up until the music changed. Right up until the dark started asking for receipts. So if you're headed to bed, keep your dreams close and your promises closer. If you're driving, don't stop at any empty motels with flickering signs. If you're grieving, don't answer the voice that sounds like comfort. And if you ever find yourself at a crossroads with a deal in your hand, just
Don't sign with anything you can't afford to lose. Sleep tight, stay spooky, and I'll see you next time, right here. Make sure you're subscribed.